Okay, so I actually want to put you in the shoes of one of our very own students so that you guys can relate. Okay, so imagine you're in your room, it's summer 2018, you're in Diamond Bar, smoking a bowl, and your phone starts to vibrate. You get a phone call, and it's from your sister. She doesn't usually call, so you decide to answer. She says that she has something serious to tell you, so you answer the phone, so you embrace and you wait for it. She says that when she was 15 years old, your youth pastor started to sexually abuse her until she graduated, and then it only gets worse from there because you also learn that the same guy, your youth pastor, didn't just abuse your sister, but he also abused your girlfriend when she was 15 years old. So I want to target a specific branch of evangelicalism. This is the fundamental independent Baptist movement that started under Jack Hyles in 1951 to 2001, where it became a megachurch in the US with the highest Sunday school attendance in the 70s and a weekly attendance of 20,000 in the 90s. Since then, hundreds of churches have emerged, all practicing the same doctrine Jack Hyles once so emphatically preached, including the church that I just mentioned in Wildomar, California, only an hour from here. So we were able to see, so the youth pastor ended up going to jail last year, or like in December. And people wanted it to stop there, but the problem doesn't just stop there. It's rooted inside of this church. So I want to argue that fundamentalism stemmed from Jack Hyles, has seeped through from generation to generation, poisoning the doctrine of many of these churches, and turning it into a cultish dogma that enables sexual, physical, and emotional abuse for decades. I want to emphasize on how these churches have enabled abuse, especially with minors, by subjecting their congregations to an authoritarian leader, manipulated theology, and a lack of accountability for those in charge. So my first point, members of the congregation are expected to follow leadership blindly without any logical backing as to why. This is often accomplished through fear, manipulation, and grooming at a young age. So I have, in the Riverside Police report for the case of abuse at Faith Baptist Church, victim 3RP, who releases her name in the report as Rachel Peach, states, when you think of a sexual predator, your mind goes to a scary person hiding in the dark alley. You don't think of your youth pastor, the person who taught you in Sunday school, the person you and your family trusted. You don't think of someone who was your friend. My youth pastor, Victor Montero, used his position of power at Faith Baptist Church in Wildomar to rape and molest me and my friends for nearly 20 years. Take the most dangerous abuser and place him in a dangerous environment such as Faith Baptist Church, and it's no surprise that it went on for so long. It was literally a rule that the adults are right even when they are wrong. This rule was repeated at every camp, teen activity, youth conference. It was ingrained in us. So there's Jack Hyles, the man who I said started this whole movement, his own daughter had a TED Talk where she exposes his own double life, and she says that he had assorted sexual secrets and manipulation tactics at his church in Hammond, Indiana. She claims those who have left, the followers who have tried to leave, outsiders, even the media, recognize that it's clearly a cult. Every member was in complete obedience to my father. They didn't dare disagree or be disloyal for fear of being publicly ridiculed or punished or banished for doing so. They didn't go on vacation without asking my dad's permission. And he had said to drink the Kool-Aid. I'm not kidding, they would have. So this kind of blind following is something that is ingrained in young people from a very young age. So my next point is subjects its members to twisted theology, where they take biblical passages, hollow them of their intentional meaning, and replace it with something that fits their own agenda. In an NPR magazine, Memoirs Evangelical Purity Movements, it says that it sees women's bodies as a threat. A woman in the evangelical movement, who she was also abused, claimed that when she was 13, she joined an evangelical church that prized sexual purity and taught that men and boys were sexually weak. According to Klein's faith, girls and women were responsible for keeping male sexual desire in check by wearing modest clothing, maintaining a sexless mind and a body, and taking a purity pledge, in which they promised to remain virgins until marriage. They put all the weight on the women rather than the men, and when they stray, rather than blaming the man, like a 40-year-old man, for raping a 15-year-old, they say, why was it them who caused, what were they wearing, what did they do that caused them to stray? Okay, so So I'm going to move on to my third and final point, how this behavior is enabled by the lack of accountability for those in charge. When a leader does something wrong, it goes unchecked. I've only given you two examples of men, but this didn't start, it doesn't end with one man, it started from Jack Hyles, which started in the 50s, and it went down all the way to 2018, so putting one man in prison isn't enough. So this went on from Jack Hyles, then to his son, David Hyles, who also is an alleged rapist and murderer, who still is in the ministry today, called Fall and Grace, where his mission states, claims, "Our story is my story, as well the story of others like me. I am one who experienced falling and for many years struggled with being restored. I learned the right way and the wrong ways for restoration through my own experiences. My goal is to share these experiences with others who have fallen and with those who are trying to restore others like myself." So he's actually been accused of of abusing several minors. And he's still in the ministry. Nothing has been done to him. His father didn't take him accountable. He just moved him from ministry to ministry. And then it goes after Jack Hyles and his son. It doesn't just stop there. It then went to his legacy, Jack COF, who was sentenced in March of 2013 for 12 years of prison for having sex with a minor. And now it went to our church, who they also went to the education of Hyles, where they learned this dogmatic way of treating their congregation. So it's now So now he's going to spend 6 years in prison for having sexually abused a 14 and 15-year-old girl, starting almost 20 years ago, and the last reported being in 2012. It was a mere act of chance that these girls discovered each other, that each one had been abused. Otherwise, it would still be going on. It's gone on for 40, 50 years, and you'd think that would be a wake-up call. But still, they preach this dogmatic, they keep being dogmatic and blaming girls. I'm going to finish with a quote from one of the last victims. She says, "I understand that no amount of time can justify what he has done, so I hope, Victor, when you're sitting in jail, feeling alone, hurt, and abandoned, instead, you dwell in your solitude and look inward, rip yourself open, scrape out the raw pieces by piece, and become repulsed by what you see, so you have no other choice but to truly seek remorse." I hope that this church, First Baptist Church of Hammond, and all the other churches who still cling to Hyles' doctrine, that of hate and of shaming women, look inside and remorse by uniting with victims instead of shaming them.
All right, Daniela, the proposition is, you do identify it, but it's very complicated and convoluted. It's got a bunch of dependent clauses in it that makes it a little bit confusing. Sometimes it sounds like it's a general condemnation of fundamentalist evangelical beliefs. Sometimes it sounds like it's specific to this particular church, and sometimes it sounds like the argument is about this church being a cult. And so all of those things might be part of the argument, but what the ultimate point is that you want us to believe is, I think, a little obscure as a consequence. The description of the events that happen, I think, is quite vivid and compelling. The examples that you have, I think, definitely show that there is an abuse problem. The argument that you're making in the body of the speech is that the abuse is not merely a result of the particular individuals involved, but that it is systemic as a result of the philosophies the church adheres to. And I think that there is an argument to be made there. I'm just not sure that the proof here is as strong as it needs to be, especially when the examples that you point to seem to be specific to particular individuals in positions of leadership. Anybody in a position of leadership is likely to be a potential abuser. That's just one of those things that happens. You always have to be careful about those kinds of things. People in positions of authority sometimes abuse their authority. That's just a given. But is the question, are they getting away with the abuse of the authority because of the belief system, or is it more likely to occur because of the belief system? That's the thing that you're saying, and I'm not sure that the proof on that is as strong as you believe it is. Especially since you like you said, and I think you acknowledged that it's particular to the 3 or 4 individuals that you mentioned by name. If we could see some more systemic examples of other pastors in this church, or, for example, some of the testimony of congregants who maybe view this as being, that it's somebody else's. Where are you? I know you're out there somewhere. There you are. That this is maybe that they view it as the woman's fault. That the people who are rationalizing the behaviors of the ministers and the pastors, that sort of thing, that might suggest, for instance, that the inference that you're making really is true, that it's a reflection of the belief system of the church that has produced this outcome, rather than just individuals who are exploiting their positions within the church. And I think that would make that argument a little bit more effective. Okay, that's where we're going to stop. Thank you.